Joining me now is Congressman Jim Jordan of the House Judiciary Committee. He's also a member of President Trump's impeachment defense team. Congressman, do Democrats really believe that these types of assertions, I'll just focus on one for a moment. We could have put together a very long montage of the number of times the word conspiracy was used. And none of this is in an article of impeachment, yet they can, under the Senate rules, say hearsay, defamation, and they can just get away with it.
Their whole case is presumptions, assumptions, and hearsay. They don't have the facts. They make things up. But frankly, it shouldn't surprise us. Remember, Adam Schiff is the guy who told us for 2 years, I have more than circumstantial evidence President Trump worked with the Russians to influence the election. That wasn't true. Adam Schiff's the guy who told us that the Nunes memo wasn't accurate. That turned out to be false. We had Mr. Horowitz's report last month. Adam Schiff said the FISA process was just fine. Mr. Horowitz told us they lied to the FISA court 17 times. Adam Schiff said we're going to hear from the whistleblower, and we have not spoken. Our staff has not spoken with the whistleblower. Both of those things were wrong. Both of those statements were wrong. So it shouldn't surprise us. Some of the things he and Nadler and his team are now asserting. The facts are solidly on the president's side. The constitutional principles are on the president's side. And the unfair process is another great argument that the White House can make, because what they did in the House was very unfair to the president. One
of the things that they alleged today was that the president doesn't really care about corruption in other countries. He doesn't care about it. Watch.
The fact that the president only wanted a public announcement and not the investigations to actually be conducted demonstrates that his desire for investigations was simply and solely to boost his reelection efforts.
Okay. This is what the president said in 2016 when he was running for president about foreign aid.
My foreign policy will always put the interests of the American people and American security above all else. I will also be prepared to deploy America's economic resources. Financial leverage and sanctions can be very, very persuasive.
This has been his entire argument. Look at NATO's now. The NATO Secretary General today said, guess what? NATO nations are starting to pay finally.
Yes, he ran on this. The American people elected him to do this. He's always been skeptical of foreign aid. We got a colleague who has a great line. He says, well, we don't have to pay people to hate us. They'll probably do it for free. So President Trump says, look, I'm not a big fan of this. We're gonna use it where we need to, but I want other European allies to share in the burden. And, oh, by the way, Ukraine, Ernst & Young said, was one of the 3 most corrupt countries on the planet. You got a new guy who was a television personality who wins election in an overwhelming majority running on corruption, and the president simply said, let's check him out. Let's see if he's the real deal. Let's see if he's genuine. And he, after 55 days, he became convinced that Zelensky, I think he is the real deal. I think he's a genuine reformer, and the aid was released.
Well, doesn't the president have it within his Article 1 powers to make these calls? I hope we hear that from the defense team, Mr. Defense Team member. That argument hasn't really been made, that he has the right to, if he wanted to hold up the aid, I don't care what the GAO said. That's a legislative body, and that has no force of law. But he's the chief executive officer of the United States. If he thinks something stinks to high heaven in Ukraine with this whole Biden thing, or corruption in general, he has every right to say, whoa, wait a second before we release this.
Of course. He's the president of the United States, elected by 63 million people for this whole obstruction of Congress.
Oh, my God.
One of my colleagues says obstruction of Congress is what the founders called separation of powers.
Yeah, it's called checks and balances.
Exactly right. Exactly
by the way, Hakeem Jeffries raised another issue that had been rejected by you all in the House. Watch.
Read the transcript, President Trump says. We have read the transcript, and it is damning evidence of a corrupt quid pro quo. The evidence against Donald Trump is hiding in plain sight.
Oh, that's very dramatic. That's a real L.A. law moment there.
Yeah,
wow.
That is ridiculous, because there was never any linkage of announcing an investigation, promising an investigation, or doing an investigation to get release of the money. So I remember asking Ambassador Sondland, I said, when did it happen? When was the announcement? And his response was, it never did. And that's the point. It never did. And yet they got the money on September 25th. They got the call. Excuse me, they got the money on September 11th. They got the meeting on September 25th. And they got the call from the president.
Well, Adam Schiff said that was because he was caught. That's the only reason the money was released.
Not true. August 31st, Senator Johnson is on a phone call with President Trump. And the president tells him, you're going to like my decision, Ron. You're going to like where this thing ends up. Because he was becoming convinced that Zelensky and the new parliament that was elected, 70% Zelensky's party, they took over the parliament, that they were actually implementing the reforms they needed to implement.
Well, more importantly, they would have put the quid pro quo in one of the articles of impeachment. Would have been under a bribery, or right? I mean, that would have been.
They were
part
saying
and
quid
parcel.
pro quo on September 24th when Nancy Pelosi announced that they were going to do this before the call. Once the call came out, they backed away from it until today when Hakeem.
No, I'm just saying they're resurrecting all the ghosts of the House impeachment process. Congressman, thanks for coming in tonight. I know it's been a long day.